All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj and all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Kamadiki Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Varuna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharajas, and all glories to the assembled devotees. This is Tiffany in Tennessee. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vardhana Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. This is Radha from Bangalore.
Hare Krishna, Radha Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dhanu Pranam.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Go
Hare
ahead.
Krishna, Vardhana Mataji, Dandavats Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai, Presidasi from Charlotte. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Preeti Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dhanu Pranam. All to you and all the devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Raj from Canada.
Hare Krishna, Raj Prabhuji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vardhana Mataji, all glories to Prabhupada and Guru Maharajis. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devidasi from Ram.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna ji, Vardhana Gopi, Dandavats Pranam, Srila Prabhupada Srila Gurudev ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Gopika Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vardhana Mataji. This is Yashamati from Chicago. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vardhana Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Radharani Devidasi from Baltimore. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radharani Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vardhana Mataji, Dandavats Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Shamagauri Devidasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Sham Gauri Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vardhana Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vinita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna. Is anybody else would like to introduce themselves? Welcoming all of you to the Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhu. Prabhuji is going to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam 5th Canto 11th Chapter 7th verse. I'll hand over the call to Praveen Govind Prabhuji to give brief introduction of His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Praveen Govind Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, my Dhanavad Pranams to all the devotees on the call. Balaram Shakti Prabhu is a full-time monk at the Govardhan Eco Village. He completed his BE in Metallurgical Engineering from NIT Tiruchirappalli in 2002. Thereafter, Prabhuji joined Pennsylvania State University and graduated with a PhD in Material Science in 2007. While at Penn State University, he took up to Krishna consciousness as a member of the Vedic Society. He was mentored by His Grace Yugal Kishore Prabhuji. After he moved back to India, he chose to become a full-time monk at the Radha Gopinath Mandir, Chowpatty. Among others, he was mentored by His Grace Gauranga Prabhu. In May 2010, he moved to Govardhan Eco Village and has been serving there as a full-time devotee. He is an erudite scholar on the Vaishnava scriptures and is one of the teachers at Bhakti Vedanta Vidyapith. He's a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Balaram Shakti Prabhuji, Dandavats Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for giving your valuable time and association to us this morning and enlightening us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now I'll hand over the call to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji. So let me just share the screen. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for joining today's session, and I would also like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to share the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam with all of you. So we have been discussing from the 11th chapter of 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we will start. So today we will be seeing the 7th verse of the 11th chapter. So we will start by reciting the verse and then the translation, and then we will read the purport, and then we will see what we can learn. So I'll chant the verse. You can chant with me if you like. Tavan ayam vyavahara sadavihi kshetrajna saksho bhavati stula sukshmaha tasman manolinga mado vadanti guna gunatvasya paravarasya. So here Srila Prabhupada translates this verse as follows. The mind makes the living entity within this material world wander through different species of life, and thus the living entity experiences mundane affairs in different forms as a human being, as a demigod, as a fat person, skinny person, and so forth. Learned scholars say that bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation are caused by the mind. So, so this verse talks about how mind is the cause of samsara, of the living entity. So let's see what Prabhupada has to say in the purport, and then we will see if we can, what we can learn from this. Purport, Srila Prabhupada says, just as the mind is the cause of bondage, it can also be the cause of liberation. Right? Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayoho bandhayai vishayasango muktiyai nirvishayam manaha. It's an often quoted verse from one of the Upanishads. Mind is the cause of both liberation and bondage. Mind attached to matter becomes the cause of bondage, and the same mind when detached from things of this world, it becomes the cause of liberation, right? The mind is described here as para avara. Para means transcendental and avara means material. When the mind is engaged in Lord's service, savai mana Krishna padaravindayoho, it is called para or transcendental. The transcendental state of mind is indicated. When the mind is engaged in material sense gratification, it is called avara or material. At the present moment, in our conditioned state, our mind is fully absorbed in material sense gratification, but it can be purified and brought to its original Krishna consciousness by the process of devotional service. Prabhupada says, we have often given the example of Ambarish Maharaj. Again he quotes, Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vacham sivakunta gunanu varnane. The mind must be controlled in Krishna consciousness. We will discuss a little more about this as the class progresses. We will discuss more about this. The tongue can be utilized to spread the message of Krishna and glorify the Lord or take prasad, the remnants of food offered to Krishna, right? Vachamsi vaikunta gunanu varnane. Sevon mukehi jihvadav. When one utilizes the tongue in the service of the Lord, the other senses can be purified. Starting with the tongue, everything can be purified. As stated in the Narada Pancharatra, Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. When the mind and senses are purified, one's total existence is purified and one's designations are also purified. One no longer considers himself a human being, a demigod, a cat or dog or Hindu, Muslim and so forth. This is the meaning of Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam. Prabhupada often mentions that these are all bodily designations actually. When the senses and mind are purified and one is fully engaged in Krishna's service, one can be liberated and return home back to Godhead. So this is the purport presented by Srila Prabhupada. Now, let's do a brief recap just to understand the context of this whole verse. So what is the context of this verse? We will try to understand, because ultimately we have to discuss this in the context of the verse only. So the last time I spoke, I did a sort of overview of the whole chapter because it was a technical chapter. I did an overview of that chapter. And today I am more or less going to do the same because we have moved on to the next chapter now. So this is a very good chapter where, teachings of Jadabharat to Rahuguna, basically about the nature of mind and how mind sort of traps a living entity in this material world. I am sure each different devotees would have spoken some aspect of it. I was just thinking that I will just give a bird's eye view of this whole chapter so that we can understand the context of this chapter and also essentially what is being spoken, so that subsequently when in future devotees speak about individual verses, you can understand the context of those verses nicely. That's what I thought. So I hope it's okay with devotees. because you should not think that every day, every time he comes, he does a recap of the chapter or overview of the chapter. Generally, overview is not my style, but sometimes I feel inspired to do it. So I hope you will bear with me. I will try to add additional details in between, just so that it does not sound like a boring overview. So please tolerate me. So we will setting the scene. So I will just do a very quick overview of what we saw in the previous chapter. So the previous chapter, in that chapter, discussion between Jadabharat and Rahuguna had just started, right? So you all know this story. Rahuguna was traveling on the banks of the Ikshumati river. He was the king of that particular province, and they were short of one palanquin bearer. Maybe he fell sick or whatever. So they were looking for one, and they saw Jadabharat was quite well built, young, and he looked just fit for that job. So they caught hold of him. They forcibly engaged him in carrying that palanquin. But Jadabharat was a self-realized soul. So when he was walking, he was observing, he would ishu matra avalokana gati. He would walk, he would wait and look for 3 feet and observe if there are any insects or ants, and he would just keep jumping and jumping and jumping like that. But you can imagine if he is having the palanquin on his shoulder and one person is just jumping, the king who is sitting inside really had a bad time, right? So he started shouting to the palanquin bearers, not knowing who was doing this. Hey, why don't you carry properly? Walk properly. Don't walk erratically like that. So the palanquin bearers understood. This time he is shouting, next time he will just kill us. They immediately told the king, oh, sorry, it's not our problem, but this new person, he has just been engaged in carrying the palanquin. He's not tired also, but he is walking erratically, because of which all of us are suffering. So Rahuguna understood that, oh, it is inappropriate to chastise everyone because of one person's, even a teamwork. If one person is not working, the team suffers. So with great anger and sarcasm, he spoke to Jadabharat. So these are sarcastic words. He said, oh, you seem to be very tired. He did not seem to be tired. And you have traveled a long path. Actually, he had not traveled a long path. He was just roaming around there. And you have been carrying for a long time, which is also not true. And all alone. No, 4 people were carrying it. You are not healthy. He was quite healthy, actually. You are not strong. He was quite strong. And you're so old. He was actually quite young. And then he says, oh, actually, you know what? The other workers are actually not cooperating with you, which is also not true, right? So this sarcasm, as we saw last time, is very, very piercing and very, very painful, actually. So in spite of being taunted in this way, Jadabharat continued to carry the palanquin in the same way. Then again the palanquin shook, and Rahuguna this time could not tolerate. He asked Jadabharat, are you dead? How could you disregard my order? I am just going to punish you like that. So when Jadabharat heard this, because he had already reached the self-realized stage, he just smiled and responded without any ill feelings towards Rahuguna. He said, Jadabharat told Rahuguna, my dear king, I don't consider your words to be sarcasm, because unlike you, I am not identifying with my body. If I had identified with my body, then whatever statements you have spoken would be sarcasm. But because I am not identifying with my body, therefore they are not sarcasm. And in fact, intelligent people don't talk in terms of body. Whatever you spoke about as fatness or thinness or hunger, thirst, tiredness, fatigue, everything, it belongs to a person who identifies with the body. But I don't identify with the body. They don't belong to me. And then he said, my dear king, you asked me, are you living dead? Then he said, Jadabharat says, actually, every body is actually already dead, because change is characteristic of the body, right? And then he said, you said that I am your master and you are disobeying my order. Then Jadabharat asked, are you sure? Are you sure that this is a permanent designation? Because tomorrow, if I get your kingdom, you become my servant, right? So this master servant, or if you come to know that I am a Brahmana, right? Then I am already your master, because Kshatriyas are subservient to Brahmanas. This is one way. And another thing is, when Jadabharat was Bharat Maharaj was the king of the whole Bharatvarsha. And Rahugana was a king of a very small province under Bharatvarsha, which means he was already a master. Bharat Maharaj in his previous life was already a master. So he's telling, you are telling that I have disregarded your order of, but are you sure that these conditions of master and servant are permanent? Therefore, my dear king, other than this material convention, I don't see any reason for the distinction between master and servant. But if you still think that you are the king and I am your servant, then yes, sir, tell me, what can I do for you? Like that, he says. So, and then he says, and you told that you are going to punish me, and in your eyes, but I want to tell you that I am a self-realized person. What are you going to achieve by punishing a self-realized person? But he may say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't look like a self-realized person. Actually, you look more like a madman. Then he says, then what are you planning to accomplish by punishing a madman? So basically, Jadabharat is telling, your actions don't make sense. So at this point of time, Rahugana becomes completely disturbed. And after speaking in this way, Jadabharat thought, okay, anyway, it must be my own prarabdha karma, so I have to suffer. I will carry. I might as well carry this palanquin. So he continued carrying, but he continued carrying the same way as before. He would look and jump, look and jump like that. But as soon as Rahugana had heard from Jadabharat, he understood how exalted a person he was. He immediately jumped off the palanquin, fell at the feet of Jadabharat, and begged for forgiveness. He said, my dear master, who are you? Whose son are you? Where are you from? Are you the Supreme Lord? In fact, you know what? I am not afraid of anything in this world. I am not afraid of Lord Shiva. I am not afraid of the punishment of Yamaraj. But I am really afraid of offending a Brahmana. But you cannot completely, I feel very bad, but you cannot completely criticize me because it was not so clear who you were. And I am trying my best to understand your words, but your words are not so clear. So, and how can a person like me, who is bound by family life, and I am bound and I am blind to spiritual knowledge, how can I know you? How can I even hope to know you? So you have to please help me understand. And then he says, here are my questions to you, my dear Jada Bharat. You said that tiredness applies to the body only and you are not the body. I understand. I also don't think I am the body. But when I perform actions, I feel tired. Sometimes I feel hungry. I feel thirsty. Are you suggesting, like the Mayavadis do, Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya, that this whole conventional word itself is false? Is that what you are suffering? Is that what you are suggesting? Because, you know, when I go and fight, I feel tired. You know, really my body gets very much affected. So you are telling that you don't get affected. I'm not able to understand this, right? Then he says, well, I understand your point that it is only the body that undergoes the fatigue. But you mean to say when the body undergoes fatigue, the soul will not experience it? See, don't think, Rahuguna is telling, don't think that I think I am this body. I don't think I am this body. In fact, Rahuguna was a spiritually enlightened person. In the sense, he knew spiritual science. He was not an ordinary person who had bodily identification, right? So he knew the science, spiritual science, that he was not the body, he was the soul. But still he says, look, I understand I am not this body. But when my body undergoes some fatigue, because my subtle body is connected to my gross body, my subtle body will also undergo some fatigue. And because the subtle body is connected to my life airs, prana, my prana will undergo some fatigue. And because the soul is carried by the prana, it is in very intimate touch with the prana, the soul will also get affected. So because of this intimate connection between the gross body and subtle body and prana and soul, whatever happens to the body must affect the soul, right? Say he gives the example of cooking sweet rice. He says, even though you want to cook the rice, you don't put the rice on fire. You put the pot on fire, right? And you pour the milk into the pot and the rice into the milk. So when fire is in touch with pot, the pot gets hot. And because of being in touch with the pot, the milk gets hot. And because of being in touch with milk, the rice gets hot and it gets cooked. So similarly, the soul should also undergo fatigue because it is in intimate touch with prana, which is in intimate touch with subtle body, which is in intimate touch with gross body. And of course, the gross body is undergoing fatigue. So what I'm speaking is reality only, right? I'm not talking in absolute material consciousness. Please don't get me wrong. Like that, Rahuguna is clarifying here. And then he says, look, you said that the position of master and servant is not permanent. So you mean to say that all the people in this world, whatever material designations they have, they should not act in that designation? Don't you think that the Shastras say that as a king, when a king executes his kingly duties, not only does he transcend the material world, but he sets the right example for others also. Isn't properly executing one's varnashrama duties a form of worshipping the Supreme Lord? So why are you criticizing me? As a king, I tried to do my job. So therefore he says, therefore please show your mercy to me. I know I have behaved very inappropriately, but I didn't know your very exalted stature. So please forgive me and clarify my doubts. And I really want to overcome this sin of committing this Vaishnava Parad. And such an aparad is capable of destroying even the greatest of personalities like Lord Shiva. So I am just an ordinary king. So I'm very afraid. So please answer my questions and please don't take offense and please forgive me. Like that, he asked. Rahuguna is speaking to Jadabharat. Now, in this chapter, there are three main topics that are discussed. First is the theme that how the mind is the cause of samsara, that will be described. Then the second theme that will be described is how this mind has many transformations. And the third theme is, and how by engaging this mind in bhakti, one can attain liberation. These are the three themes. Essentially, this whole chapter is about mind. And I'm not very sure how much time we will have to cover, but at least we will see how much we can cover. Okay. So now he has presented this presentation. How can you reject the conventional world? See, this is a classic discussion where Rahuguna is speaking on the level of a lower reality, which is true, right? But Jadabharat is constantly trying to pull him up to a higher level of reality. So this is just like the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna speaks from the Dharma Shastras, and Krishna speaks from the Jnana Shastras and Bhakti Shastras. So both are actually speaking Shastras only. They're quoting from the Shastras, but there is a different level. And Krishna is trying to pull him up from a lower level to a higher level. Similarly, here, Jadabharat is also trying to pull Rahuguna from a lower level to a higher level. So for a long time, it will seem like Jadabharat is speaking his own philosophy and Rahuguna is speaking his own philosophy. He is speaking on this level, which seems right, and he is speaking on this level, which also seems right. But where is the connect? See, basically the connect is that Jadabharat is trying to tell Rahuguna, look, I know all these Shastras. I am trying to pull you to a higher level. I am trying to raise your quality. Bhakti. Don't be stubbornly attached to acting on a lower level. I am trying to pull you to a higher level. Please try to come to a higher level. That is the point. Otherwise, you will see that they are speaking in two different paradigms. Rahuguna is speaking in his own paradigm and Jadabharat is speaking in his own paradigm. But Jadabharat is trying to pull Rahuguna to a higher paradigm. That is the truth, actually. So, as we saw, there are Dharma Shastras which talk in terms of while in this material world and while being conditioned and while identifying with the body, how do you act within this system of Varna and Ashrama? And Jadabharat is talking on the level of what is the knowledge of a person who is willing to transcend this material world. Transcendental knowledge, right? That's what he's talking about. So, okay. So, Jadabharat says, Brahmana uvacha. Akovidaha kovidavadavadan vadasyato nati vidam varishtah nasurayo hi vyavahara tatvava marshena sahamananti. So he says, this is very similar to Ashochan anvashocastvam pragyavadamscha bhashase gatasun agatasuncha nanushocanti pandita. This is the first verse that Krishna speaks to Arjuna. He says, Ashochan anvashocastvam pragyavadamscha bhashase. You are speaking like a very learned man, O Arjuna. Same thing he is telling. Oh, Rahuguna, you are speaking like a very learned person. but you're unlearned. Therefore, I don't think you are learned. Why? Because the wise do not speak of the material world by discerning it to be the truth. So this material existence is like a dream state, right? Because of wrong identification with the body. So within the dream, someone may ask him, oh, what would you like to have? How would you like to enjoy? Oh, I would like to have a nice pizza with very nice toppings, with nice thick cheese, whatever. And I would like to have an ice cream with it and all that. And someone may try to wake you up from the dream. And someone may say, no, wait. First, let me have pizza, like that. So Jadabharat is telling, hey, look, actually wake up. Don't talk in terms of the dream. You are talking in terms of dream. How you can better act within the realm of dream. Akovida kovida vadan vadanti. Vadasi. You are, even though unlearned, you are speaking words of a learned person. Because the wise do not speak of the material world by discerning it to be the truth. So whenever in Vaishnava Shastras it is mentioned that the material world is not truth, it means it is not truth in the sense it is temporary. That's how we should understand. It is not completely false, but it is temporary. All designations are temporary and everything is temporary, right? Like that. So here it is explained, you are not learned, but you speak words of objection like that of the wise, right? As if you know everything. Therefore, you are not the best among the very wise, since the wise do not speak of the material world and its objects with deliberation on truth, calling the object substantial while giving examples, since both have faults. See, you are giving very good examples, but this is at a very low level. That's what he says. Just as Arjuna is telling, hey, if my grandfather dies, if I have to kill my grandfather, it is but natural that I feel very bad. If I have to kill my guru, it is but natural that I feel very bad. And Krishna says, hey, you are giving such confident arguments. Gatasun agatasun cha nanu shochanti pandita. Asuhu means life air. Gata asuhu means that from which the life air leaves, which is the gross body. At the time of transmigration, the life air along with the soul and the subtle body goes from one gross body to another gross body. So gata asuhu means that from which the life air leaves at the time of death. Agata asun, agata asuhu, that from which the life air does not leave, which is the subtle body. Cha, and in great learned people do not lament for the destruction of the gross body, for the destruction of the subtle body, and for the destruction of the soul. Why? They don't lament for the destruction of the gross body because gross body, even while living, it's getting destroyed. Right? That is the nature of gross body. Why they don't lament for destruction of subtle body? They don't lament because destruction of subtle body means liberation. Why they don't lament for the destruction of soul? Because soul cannot be destroyed. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyapo, na shoshayati marutaha. Krishna says, the soul cannot be killed. So you are justifying why you are lamenting. I am telling you, intelligent people, even whether you are identifying with the soul, you are identifying with the gross body, or you are identifying with the subtle body, due to any of these identifications, you should not lament because the gross body anyway is dying even while you are living. Subtle body, when it gets destroyed, it leads to liberation, and the soul does not get destroyed. So what are you lamenting for? Are you lamenting for the gross body or the subtle body or the soul? If you are lamenting for the gross body, then you have to lament 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for your whole lifetime, because every moment your body is dying, gross body. If you are lamenting for the subtle body, then you are lamenting for liberation. Oh, and if you are lamenting for the soul, you foolish person, don't you know that the soul cannot get destroyed? What are you lamenting for? Same thing here, he says, you are lamenting for this material world as if this material world is all in all. Don't you understand that this material world is fit to be given up, and you are lamenting for that, and you're talking as if this is all in all? He says, you have given a very sophisticated example or analogy to explain this point. He says, you have given the example of the fire applied to the pot which heats the milk which cooks the rice, right? He says, in this example, there is connection of material pot with material fire, right? However, there is no contact of the material senses with the liberated Atma, which is a spiritual particle. Actually, there is no touch between the soul and the subtle body in reality, or the gross body. In reality, there is no touch. Okay. That connection is made due to ignorance, avidya potency. Avidya potency makes that link, right? So, but for a liberated soul, even though he may stay in a gross body, there is no avidya. So even though he's staying in the body, he is not identifying with the body. So when the body undergoes fatigue, the soul is not experiencing anything, right? Thus, fatigue of the body does not mean fatigue of the Atma for a liberated soul. So this is classic Atmavan Manyate Jagat. I am a conditioned soul. I undergo fatigue. He must also be a conditioned soul. He must also be undergoing fatigue. This kind of an argument. Because the conditioned jiva is covered by the material body, the conditioned jiva experiences fatigue because of the fatigued body, which is, and he is identifying with the material body due to the avidya potency, right? So he says, Jadabharat says, your inference, even though you have given such a sophisticated analogy to explain your point, your inference fails because you cannot say that you, the conditioned jiva, are the same as me, the liberated jiva. So you and I are not same. Don't put us on the same pedestal and insult me like this, right? Like that he says, I am trying to pull you up and you are trying to pull me down. That's what he is indicating. I am trying to make you also into a liberated soul, and you are trying to pull me down and talk with me as if I am a conditioned soul just like you, like that. So a similar question is asked by Parikshit Maharaj in the 2nd canto, 8th chapter. This is the first question that he asks. He says, the whole chapter is filled with questions only, which he starts answering in the 9th chapter. Yad adhatumato brahman deharambosya dhatubihi yadrichaya hetunava bhavanto janate yata. So he says, O Brahmana, please explain asya adhatumato deha. So he says, this body of the jiva, dhatubihi, this body of the jiva, which is spiritual, is made of matter, dhatu. There is adhatumato jiva and dhatumato deha, material body and spiritual soul. How did their relationship happen? Yadrichaya hetunava. Did it happen by chance, or is there a specific reason why this relationship happened? Bhavanto janate yata, you must be knowing the answer. Can you please explain this question? Explain the answer to this question. How did this relationship between the spirit soul and material body happen? In the next chapter, very first verse, he answers this question. He says, your question is wrong. Why? He says, because there is no real relationship between jiva and the body, he says, even for a conditioned soul. He says, Atmamayam rite rajan parasyanubhavatmanah na ghatetartha sambandha swapna drashtur ivanjasa. So he says, artha sambandha, which means a real relationship na ghateta, between the body and the jiva, na ghateta, does not actually take place. Atma mayam rite. You know, a perceived relationship is there only because of the avidya shakti. Just like, let's say someone has a white Toyota Corolla car, okay, and that is standing outside the house, okay, and some guest has come, or somewhere else, some other stranger has come. He also has a Toyota Corolla car, which is white in color, and he has incidentally parked that car outside your house, okay. So, and suddenly there is a small accident. A truck comes and jams that Toyota Corolla car. You look at that car and you are almost having a heart attack. So you think, hey, why you are feeling bad? Do you have a connection with the car? And he says, yeah, that is my car, you think. But in reality, it's not your car. It is only out of ignorance we are thinking that it is my car. But if not for that ignorance, there is no identification with the car and there is no heartbreak, right? So he says, only due to ignorance does a relationship between the jiva and the body take place. If ignorance is not there, there is no connection. Even though the jiva may live within the body, but there is no connection with the body. Okay. Swapna drashtur ivanjasa. It is just like a dreamer seeing his dream body. And identifying. What we are talking about is actually a dream within a dream. Material life itself is a dream. Material life means while the body is not dream, but to think that this body belongs to me and I have a connection with this body, that is like a dream, right? Like that. Anyway, we will move ahead. So then Rahuguna may say, Are, you are criticizing me for talking about the material world as being real, but the Vedas are filled with knowledge about living in this material world, right? The Vedas are filled with knowledge about living in this material world. So many scriptures talk about how one should live in this material world. What is dharma? What is adharma? How you can go to Swarga? How you can enjoy there? How you can live within this earth? How you can enjoy? What you should do to get a son? What you should do to gain a kingdom? What you should do to get rain? So many things. The Shastras are only talking. And you are talking me, you are criticizing me for talking about the material world as being real, but the Shastras themselves never say that this material world is false, isn't it? So why are you talking like this? So he says, Tataiva rajan urugarhameda vitana vidyoru vijrumbiteshu navedavadeshu hitatvavadah prayena shuddonu chakasti sadhuhu. So he says, actually, Tattvavadah, discussions about the absolute truth or spiritual subject matters, What is the nature of those discussions? Shuddha, they are devoid of violence. And sadhuhu, they are devoid of passion. Unlike the discussions about this material truth, which is filled with violence and it is filled with passion. So therefore, discussions about the absolute truth, na prayena chakasti, generally do not arise Vedavadeshu, in the Vedic scriptures. In the Vedic state, the Vedas generally do not talk about absolute truth. Why? Then what the Vedas talk about? Uru Vijrambiteshu. It is filled predominantly with Uru Garhameda Vitana Vidya. Vidya means knowledge. What kind of knowledge? It is filled with knowledge about proliferation of householders' sacrifices. What kind of sacrifices the householders can do to increase their enjoyment. That is what it talks about. Right? This is what Krishna also tells, right? Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna. The three Vedas mostly talk about, the Vedas primarily talk about the three gunas, how to act within the three gunas. But does it mean the Vedas do not talk anything about absolute truth? No, because our proof is Shabda Praman only, right? Then how can you say that Shabda Praman talks only about material things? Right? So they predominantly talk about Traigunya Vishaya, but they also talk about absolute truth. But because most people fall within the category of conditioned souls, most of the Shastras talk at that level only. But there are some people who are qualified for liberation. There are some small parts of those Vedas which cater to them. And some have taken up to devotional service, and still a minuscule part of the Vedas talk about pure devotional service also. Right? So he says, talking about the highest truth is not for the ignorant who are unqualified. That is explained in this verse. He says, just as spiritual discussion does not arise in daily mundane activities which give visible results, so spiritual discussion certainly does not arise in Vedic statements manifesting prominently as a proliferation of sacrifices related to household life with unseen results known as karma. So mostly people are interested in a comfortable material life. So that is what most people are concerned about. So therefore, in order to attract them towards Shastras seem to give them very nice ideas for comfortable material life, right? But ultimately it wants to attract them to spiritual life. That is what it is meant for, right? Why they talk about householder sacrifice only mostly? He says, because spiritual discussions are pure, without violence and without passion. So therefore passionate people cannot really understand such discussions. They are different from discussions of Swarga. If someone comes and to him, how can you tell that this material world is just like a dream? He will not be willing to hear you. He's convinced that I can enjoy here. Nanyada sthiti vadinaha. Kamatmanahas, what is it? Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipashchita vedavada rata partha na anyadasti vadinaha. You think there can be nothing higher than this. Just tell me, how can I go and enjoy in Swarga? To such people, what kind of discussion about absolute truth you can explain? Spiritual discussions do not generally arise in these statements. However, by performing those activities of the Vedas without desire for results and offering them to the Lord and my knowledge and detachment, one can reach the spiritual platform. So the purpose is, initially one may start performing it with attachment, but gradually, because they are following the Shastras, some kind of purification happens,
and slowly they get elevated to offering the fruits of those activities to the Supreme Lord, which makes that activity slowly more and more transcendental, right? So yeah, so then the question arises, okay, so then who is qualified and who is not qualified for understanding the absolute truth? Look, I am quoting from the Shastras. You are telling this is lower Shastra, and you are telling you are quoting the higher Shastra. And when I am asking why you are not giving me the higher Shastra, you are telling I am not qualified. Shastra, and who is qualified for the lower Shastra? What is the qualification to understand the absolute truth through scriptures? Who is qualified to access those scriptures? You tell me. So, Jadabharat says, Natasya tattva grahanaya sakshad variyasirapi vachas samasan swapne niruktya grihamedi saukyam na yasya heyanumitam swayam syat. So he says, swayam, a person who himself na heya anumitam syat. Na, not, heya, inferior, anumitam, infer, one who by himself cannot infer the inferiority of householder life. Here householder life means material life, materially absorbed life. He is not talking, he is not establishing the superiority of material brahmacharya or proper householder life. Here, household life literally means a materially absorbed life. That's what it means. And what is that household life? He says, Grihamedi Saukyam, where everyone is absolutely dedicated to enjoying in this material world, and they are not convinced that there can be a higher level of happiness. So, for such people, Swapne Niruktya, whose happiness is just like a dream, so such persons, na samasad, they cannot access Vachaha, the Vedanta, Sakshad Variyasir Tattva Grahanaya, for understanding the highest truth. So such people, you cannot teach Vedanta to them. You cannot teach Vedanta to them. So therefore, Narada Muni, while instructing Vyasadeva in the first canto, he says, Vichakshanosya arhati veditam vibor ananta parasya nivrittita sukam pravartamanasya gunair anatmanas tato bhavan darshaya cheshtitam viboho. He says, my dear Vyasadeva, because he was criticizing Vyasadeva for writing this Karmakandiya scriptures. So Vyasadeva says, look, have I written only Karmakandiya scriptures? I have written the Vedanta Sutras. The Narada Muni says, who can understand these Vedanta Sutras? Ananta Parasya Nivrittita Sukam. Those people who are completely disgusted with this material pleasures, those who are completely convinced that, this is not the highest pleasure. And those who have gained that knowledge, those whose heart is fairly purified, they can study the Vedanta and surrender to the Supreme Lord. What about the attached person? What about the attached person? He says, Pravartamanasya gunair anatmanas. For them you have given only the Karmakandiya scriptures. Jugupsitam dharma krite anushasatah. स्वभाव रक्तस्य महान् व्यतिक्रमः यद् धर्मतो इति इतरः स्थितो न मन्यते तस्य निवारणं जना. You have given them this Karmakandi scriptures, and these people are by nature attached to enjoy. And by supporting this kind of enjoyment, you have distracted them. Rather, you should have given them Krishna Katha. Pravartamanasya gunair anatmanas tato bhavan darshe cheshtitam vibhoho. Give them the teachings of, because they want entertainment, they want enjoyment. Let them enjoy by reading the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like that. So the point is, for people who are completely absorbed in enjoying, they cannot understand the Vedanta, which talks about the absolute truth. So he says, the words of the Vedanta are not at all suitable for all men, even though those words are best for directly understanding the highest truth. Okay, but it has qualifications, right? That's why the Vedic scriptures give instructions, different instructions for people with different qualification. One who does not understand this, he will either think that all instructions are for me, or he will see that, oh, these are contradictory instructions, therefore the Vedic scriptures are ridiculous. He will think like that. As in a dream which is momentary and false, these same men do not on their own infer the inferiority of the happiness of household life. If they have not concluded that this household life or this material life or life dedicated to material enjoyment is inferior, such people cannot understand Vedanta. The happiness of the karmis is temporary, meager, and related to material objects. Thus, the Atma does not have a relationship with this material happiness. Right? This happiness is false for the Atma, like horns on a rabbit. The happiness of a Jnani, however, is eternal, not temporary, since it is related to Brahman. So therefore, he says that for those who are attached to enjoyment of this material world, how can I convince them about the bliss of Brahman? Right? Then Rahuguna might ask this question, but why is it that people engage in activities for material happiness in spite of being enlightened on this subject matter? If there is so much enlightenment in the Vedas about the subject matter, why do people engage in activities for material happiness? Right? As Vidura also asks Maitreya, Sukaya karmani karoti loko natai sukam vanya duparamam va vindeta bhuyas tataeva dukkam yadatra yuktam bhagavan vadennaha. He says, Sukaya karmani karoti loko. My dear Lord, my dear Maitreya, people of this world are engaged in performing actions for two reasons, Sukha pravritti and Dukkha nivritti, for enhancing their happiness and destroying their suffering. Okay, Natai Sukam Vanya Duparamamba, but they don't attain that happiness, nor do they destroy the suffering. Vindeta Bhuyas Tatayeva Dukkam. They get old, on the other hand, they get more and more suffering only and no happiness. Yadatra Yuktam, but still they are engaged in performing the same activities again and again. Where do they get the inspiration from? Why do they do it? You please tell me. Like that. Same thing. Here Rahuguna may ask, if there is so much enlightenment about the futility of material enjoyment, why people continuously engage in these activities? Can you please explain? So here he says, Yavan manorajasa purushasya satvena va tamasa vanuruddham cheto birakuti biratanoti nirankusham kushalam chetaram va. So he says, Yavan purushasya manaha. As long as a man's mind, rajasa, satvena va, tamasava anuruddham. Anuruddham means it is bound. As long as a person's mind is bound by Rajogun, Sattvagun, and Tamogun in the form of various impressions, right? Nirankusham, the mind is like a mad, uncontrolled elephant. Atanoti, that mind continues to engage that person, kushalam cha itaramba, in dharmic activities or adharmic activities. If his mind has predominantly mode of goodness impressions, sattva-guni vasanas, then it engages him in dharmic activities naturally. If it is filled with rajasic and tamasic impressions, then it pushes him in the direction of adharma, right? Chetobir akutibir, using the karmendriyas and gyanendriyas, or the knowledge acquiring senses and action senses, it engages them in those activities. So as long as a man's mind is bound up by these vasanas, he will naturally engage. And if he does not have a higher value system which says this is right, this is wrong, then he okay. So the question is, why is it that generally, even though enlightened by devotees, all men engage in material happiness? Why? He says, as long as the mind is bound by rajas, sattva, or tamas, the mind, like an uncontrolled mad elephant, engages a saintly person in dharma or adharma by the karmendriyas and gyanendriyas. By force, the mind with its gunas destroys discrimination and engages in pious or sinful actions. All right? Mind pushes that person to act in this way. He loses discrimination. So, if mind is the cause, what is the nature of this mind? What is the nature of this mind? So he says, Savasanatma Vishayoparakto Guna Pravaho Vikrita Shodashatma Bhibrat Pratannama Birupa Bhedam Antar Bahishtvam Chapuraistanoti. So he says, Saha, this mind, Shodasha Atma. This is the chief amongst the 16 elements. Okay, the 16 elements are five Gyanendriyas and 5 sense objects and the mind. So amongst these 16, mind is the chief. That's why it is called as Shodashatma. The mind, which is the chief amongst the 16 elements. So this is the first description of mind, Shodashatma. This is the chief amongst the 16. Second, Vasanatma. Vasanatma means it is filled with vasanas, impressions, pious and sinful impressions. The third characteristic of mind is Vishayoparakto. It is attached to sense objects because of his past experience. And the fourth characteristic of mind is Guna Pravaho. It is agitated by the gunas. Guna Pravaho. And then the fifth characteristic is that Vikritaha. It is transformed by emotions, right? The same mind, when he is happy, he is attracted to ice cream. But when he is so morose because maybe a dear relative has passed away and he is lamenting, when he looks at the ice cream, nothing happens. So mind has transformed. Vishayoparakto Vikritaha. It is transformed by the different forms. Antar Bahishtvam cha Puraistanoti. through acceptance of different bodies extends itself higher and lower positions with different names. So it is the mind. What if we had a human body and a different mind, or a animal body and a human mind, right? It would become absolutely impossible actually to, like, for example, when Arjuna wanted to see the universal form, which is fit for at the most celestial beings to see, but definitely devotees don't like to see the universal form. Krishna retained his devotee heart and gave him celestial vision, celestial material vision, but pure devotional heart. So he could not tolerate it. So for the mind to keep a person happily situated in a particular body, the mind has to identify with that body, and it should have the favorable human like vasanas. It supports the different forms like that. So in this way, this is the sixth characteristic, right? Bibrat Rupa Bedam, like that. So in this way, the 6 qualities of mind are given, right? Then the question arises, and this mind is mentioned to be the cause of happiness and distress, right? But the question arises, but how can the mind, which is just dull matter, create happiness and distress to the jiva? It's just dull matter. Dull matter has no volition, no free will. How can dull matter create happiness or distress, right? So in the next verse, it is mentioned, Dukkam sukam yatiriktam cha tivram kalopapannam falamavyanakti alingyamaya rachitantaratma swadehinam samsriti chakrakutaha. So he says, Antaratma, the mind, samsriti chakrakutaha, which is the cause of deception in the repetition of birth and death. This deceptive birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudustare, kripaya pare pahi murare. Right. So this circle of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, like that. Okay. Maya rachita. This mind is made of Maya, and it is inanimate matter only, but swadehinam alingya, but it has embraced the jiva, or rather the jiva has embraced the mind. Just like if the jiva, if a person chooses to wear a green goggles, so you may say, oh, the green goggles is making him look everything green. But the person only chose to pick up the green goggles and wear it. Alingya. Swadehinam alingya. The green glasses are embracing his eyes, because of which he is seeing everything green. Similarly, the mind is embracing the jiva. Just like the refrigerator, when it gets connected to the electricity, it has the ability to cool, but it needs the electricity to power it. Similarly, mind cannot act on its own. It needs the electricity of the jiva. When the jiva connects with the mind, mind has its own nature, just like this green glass. And when the eyes of the jiva comes with the green glass of the mind, the jiva starts seeing everything green. Right? So the mind, or the jiva, embraces the mind, And because the mind is embracing the jiva, the mind creates unavoidable fruits in the form of dukkam, sukham, vyatiriktam, distress, happiness, illusion, kalopapannam during the course of time. So the mind, because of its close proximity to the jiva, and because the jiva identifying with the mind acts in this particular way. But if the jiva is not powering the mind through this false identification, mind will not have this effect, right? So then, now coming back to today's verse, and who witnesses this samsara that is created by the mind? Who is witnessing this whole samsara which is created by the mind? This whole samsara is created by the mind. Who is witnessing it? It is the jiva who is witnessing it. That's what this verse talks about. Kshetrajna saksho bhavati stula sukshmaha tasman manolingam ado vadanti guna gunatvasya paravarasya. So he says, I am this samsara created by the mind, manifested as the practical material world. What you see as the material world, which is worthy to pursue, is actually samsara which is created by the mind, with waking and dream states. Sada saksho, and this is constantly witnessed by the kshetragya. Kshetra is the body, kshetraga is the knower of the body, which is the soul. So this samsara, or this practical material world, is observed by the soul. Tasmad, therefore, vadanti, therefore learned people say, mano lingam, the mind is the cause of guna agunatvasya. The mind is the cause of bondage and liberation, which are para avarasya, which are the higher state and the lower state. The higher state is the liberation, the lower state is the bondage. So mind is the cause of bondage and liberation, right? Now, the question is, how the mind causes bondage and liberation? I remember probably we discussed this once before. I will just touch this subject matter, and then we will see how we are doing with time. Okay. So, as we saw last time, or sometime, actually, there are 5 types of ignorance which Bhagavatam talks about: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesh. Okay. So how this mind binds the living entity to this material world, and how one can get liberated from that. That's what this verse is talking about. We will just try to touch this topic a little bit. Okay. So avidya means, basically, I will very quickly go through it. Avidya means past impressions, vasanas. Okay. And asmita, asmi means I am. Asmita means I amness. So even though for millions and millions of lifetimes we have been in various bodies, and we have impressions that we have accumulated from various bodies, but still, while we are in a particular body, we identify with that body only. All the impressions that we have accumulated from other bodies, we are shielded from that. So who is shielding? This asmita feature tiger, but all the tiger impressions are shielded, covered. They are not destroyed, but they are covered. But the next time we get a tiger's body, immediately we run to our mother tiger and try to suck milk from that mother tiger only, and not from a mother cow, because that is the work of asmita. Then there is raga. Based on our past impressions, we are attracted to certain things, attachment, and dvesha, we hate certain things. And then there is abhinivesh. Abhinivesh means absorption a deep absorption to enjoy what we like and destroy what we hate, or stay away from what we hate. This intense absorption is called as abhinivesh. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesh. Right? Now, when this is talking about mana, mind, actually it is not talking just about mind. It is talking about what the Shastras call as antakarana. Antakarana is this 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Chitta, buddhi, mana, and ahankar. So false ego. So and they all are connected to vasanas, or past impressions. Okay. So now, what is the purpose of this antakarana? These 4, they actually convert sensory signals into emotions. You see, this is frustration, horror, or sadness, happiness, and some naughty mood, whatever. So what is the role of this chitta? Chitta means cognition of, or awareness, you can say, awareness of a familiar stimulus. Okay. So you see here, you form, okay, with your nose you experience smell, with your tongue you taste the food, and with your skin you touch, you experience touch. So as soon as one of your senses also comes in touch with the familiar stimulus, it's a familiar smell or a familiar sight or a familiar sound, immediately chitta becomes active. Why? Because chitta is in connection with the vasanas. So it says, oh, something, there is a very familiar stimulus. What is it? Then it activates the buddhi and mana. What does buddhi do? Buddhi again checks back with the vasanas and it says, oh, that stimulus is a smell, and it is the smell of samosa, and that samosa is getting fried in the kitchen, and very soon it will land on my plate. Okay. So all these details buddhi collects. Then mind or mana, it collects emotions. What were the emotions connected with samosa? Pleasure, happiness, joy, like that. And then false ego connects the emotions to the self. How did I feel the last time I ate that samosa? Oh, I really enjoyed it, and it's going to land on my plate. Wow, I am so happy, right? So the mind experiences this cool feeling, the cool emotion. Wow, it's going to land on my plate. I'm going to enjoy it, like that. So in this way, all the sensory signals, when they go through the central processing unit of this antakarana, it generates into emotions. Okay. So what we call as mind. So mind, we say savasanatma. You see, what is mentioned as mind here is this unit of 4: chitta, buddhi, mana, and ahankar. Vasanatma. It is filled with vasanas. It has connection with vasanas, right? Like that. And their role is to generate material emotions which bind one to this material world. Okay. And these material emotions are generated using this. So this vasanas are this avidya, right? Okay. And when the sense objects or the sensory signals are gone through this, it generates raga based on our past experience and dvesha, and later they transform into raga abhinivesh and dvesha abhinivesh. These are emotions. These are emotions. These are deep emotions. Hatred. I don't want. This is dvesha binivesh. Horror. It was so horrible. Dvesha binivesh. It was so cool, wonderful. Raga binivesh. Right? These are all raga binivesh emoticons. These are all dvesha binivesh emoticons. And these actually bind one to this material world. Right? And I think we did discuss about this Pavlov's experiment last time. I don't want to go into it. I don't have time. But this chapter eventually ends with how do you overcome. Okay. So Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita mudoyam nabijanati loko mam ajamavyayam. So he says, na aham prakasha sarvasya. People cannot see me or understand me. Why? Yogamaya samavrita, because I am covered by the curtain of Yogamaya. Okay. Mudoyam nabijanati. Therefore, unintelligent people cannot understand me. Like that he says. And then he says, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. But I know all things in the past, present and future, O Arjuna. I can see everyone. No one can see me. Oh, really? So what is that curtain of Yogamaya made of? What is that curtain of Yogamaya made of? He says, Icha dvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. He says, Icha samuttena, born out of dvandva moha. Dvandva moha means likes and dislikes. Okay. Sarva bhutani sammoham yanti. Sammoham means abhinivesh. Intense bewilderment or intense absorption. Raga abhinivesh, dvesha abhinivesh. Okay. Parantapa. Since when? Sarge. Since the beginning of creation. So basically, what this curtain of Yogamaya is made of, he says, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesh. This is what the curtain is made of. Now, how you can remove this curtain and see Krishna? Right? Krishna tells in the next verse of this Bhagavad Gita. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandvamoha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrataha. He says, Yesham tu, but those people, antagatam papam. Antagatam means those who have put a full stop, those who have ended. Papam here refers to not sins. It refers to material impressions or vasanas or avidya. Okay. For those who have put a full stop to avidya, how do they put a full stop to avidya? He says, punya karmanam. So punya karma means pious activities, or punya karma can also mean pleasing activities. So pleasing activities means activities which are very pleasing to great devotees and Krishna, which is actually devotional service. Okay. So those who have yesham to antagatam papam, those who have put a full stop to their sinful impressions by practice of devotional service, those people, raga and dvesha, they can overcome raga and dvesha, and raga binivesh and dvesha binivesh. And then what happens? Mam bhajante, then they can worship me. Dridavrataha. Dridavrataha means with determination. Okay. So basically what he says is punya karma leads to antagatam papam. It leads to dvandva moha nirmukta. And it leads to dridavrata bhajan. Okay. So punya karma is actually devotional service, which is bhajana kriya. Basically what this verse says is bhajana kriya leads to antagatam papam. Antagatam papam is anartha nivritti. Okay. So if anartha paradigm of right and wrong according to bhakti, we will also act in terms of likes and dislikes. Okay. So that is dvandva moha. Okay. Then eventually dridavrata bhajan means this is nishta, determined service of Krishna. Right. So basically what this verse says is bhajana kriya leads to anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti, after anartha nivritti comes nishta. So basically the solution for removing this curtain, he says, is bhajana kriya or bhakti. Bhakti, performing bhakti gradually accomplishes anartha nivritti, and this anartha nivritti is actually destruction of the material vasanas. So which is what this Yogamaya curtain is made of. Anyway, give me just last 1 minute. I'm just going to summarize what we have seen. Anyway, I'm skipping the subsequent slides. So anyway, I have already summarized. It's enough. Okay, I'm sorry I have taken long time. So if there is time for questions, we will take some questions. I'm sorry for going over time.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for wonderful class, Prabhu. You detailedly recapped everything. I really liked it, Prabhuji. If anybody have any questions, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhuji, thank you for the wonderful class. Though I need to listen to it again and again to understand. You have given so many points. And Prabhuji, one thing, when you were saying Vasana, you said Chitta, Buddhi, Mana, and false ego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So usually we see that mind, false ego, and intelligence, they make our subtle body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then this consciousness is the Chitta, if I understood it correct.
No, that's a very simplified explanation of what is Chitta. It's not consciousness. It is.
Sorry, Prabhuji, it got cut in between. So Chitta, you said, is a simplified version, is consciousness. There is more to it.
Yeah, it is not consciousness actually. It is more of awareness of a familiar stimulus.
Okay. Yeah.
So for lack of a better word, the word consciousness is used, but it is it's different from consciousness. Actually, it is more than that.
So Prabhuji, Vasana, what is the difference between Vasana and our subtle body? Because they are also made of these things, right? Isn't it?
subtle body has vasanas also. The subtle body carries the vasanas.
Okay.
So vasanas are very much an integral part of our subtle body. But vasanas is vasanas are one part of our subtle body. Apart from that, so subtle body has chitta, subtle body has buddhi, subtle body has mana, subtle body has ahankar, subtle body has vasanas. Then subtle body has our subtle nose, subtle tongue, subtle eyes, subtle ears, subtle skin, which is called as sukshmendriyas, the subtle organs. So, just like we have gross nose, which is called as nasika.
Yeah.
To smell is grana. The gross nose, which is nasika. We have the gross ears, which are called as karna. And then we have our subtle ears, which is called as shabda. Shrotra. I'm sorry, shrotra. And then we have gross eyes, which is called as nayana. And then we have chakshu, which is the subtle eyes. And apart from that, there are sense devatas also, which are also part of subtle body. Like eyes are controlled by Surya, ears are controlled by the Dig devatas, then nose is controlled by the Ashwini Kumaras. So the subtle body is quite complex. It's not, it has many components into it.
So, Prabhuji, my thing, this I have asked previously also. The thing is that when we fall down into this material world, it says that it gets contaminated and get covered by Maya Devi. So, what gets contaminated? Like you were explaining, like we Jivatma, they go on and hold on to the mind rather than mind holding back. Did I get it correct, Prabhu?
Question is?
Sorry, Prabhu, it's getting cut for me. I don't know about others. Can I repeat?
I understood your question, Mataji. I heard you completely.
Okay.
So the last point is, you asked, so I told that the jiva holds on to the mind, correct?
Yeah.
So why does jiva hold on to the mind? Is that your question?
No, my question was, that will be a wonderful too if I get an answer for that. But the thing is, like, what gets contaminated? Because soul is supposed to be Sachidanand. And I have heard that my chitta, I thought, which is like simplified version of consciousness, I thought it's a part of what do you call the soul. I mean, it's a feature of the soul. So now that I understand it's a part of our subtle body, so it confused me, it brings me back to the confusion that I had earlier, because one brahmachari, senior brahmachari in the class had told that, we have this, along with the soul, we have subtle body, gross body, soul, and consciousness, he had mentioned, and he gave me a Bhagavatam verse also for that. So now that it comes back to chitta becomes a part of subtle body. Now, does that just get contaminated? I'm sorry, Prabhu. It is like, I'm very confused there. That's why my question might also sound very confusing.
Or it may confuse you more.
Okay.
But let me see. In actually, this mind, intelligence, chitta, and ahankar, these four are actually constitutionally spiritual only. You understand, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
They are constitutionally spiritual, but functionally they can be either material or spiritual. Okay. So chitta, buddhi, mana, ahankar, and even the subtle senses and all that, they are constitutionally spiritual, because they are in Bhakti Sandarbha. Srila Jiva Goswami discusses this point. They're constitutionally spiritual because they are originally part of Krishna's Chit Shakti only. But because of the avidya potency, they can be functionally either material or spiritual.
Okay. Yes, I got it, Prabhu.
If they are functioning in conjunction with material impressions or material vasanas, then they are functionally material. If they are working in conjunction with material vasanas and a false ego, then they take those material sensory signals and convert them into material emotions and bind the living entity to the material world. But if they are working in conjunction with Krishna conscious vasanas, then they take the sensory signals and generate spiritual emotions and then bind the living entity back to the spiritual world.
Okay, Prabhu.
So
Yes.
they are functionally, they can be either material or spiritual. That is why Prabhupada also in the purport talks about spiritualizing the senses, spiritualizing the subtle body, like that.
Yes, Prabhu. So when we are in Krishna conscious activities, then we are functionally also, our subtle body is functionally also spiritual. But if we are into mundane thing or material activities,
Mataji,
then it is.
I lost your voice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. So spiritually, they're constitutionally they are spiritual, but functionally, if we engage our subtle body also into spiritual activities, it becomes spiritual. And if it is engaged in material activities or mundane activities, it becomes material, isn't it, Prabhu? Functionally.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yeah. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for the class, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Balaram Shakti Prabhuji. Thank you so much for it's such an incredible class. And like Mataji just said, I want to go back and watch the video over and over again because there's so many wonderful details. I just have a technical question. You kind of answered a little bit of what I wanted to know in answering Anuradha's question. But my question, you had mentioned that the jiva is electricity for the mind. So basically, it's powering up. Of course, it's powering the mind, so to speak. However, when do the gunas come into that? Is that just through the subtle body, or I'm sorry, let me see if I can explain this a little better. So basically, the jiva is just. It just powers the mind, but it doesn't give it the gunas, right? Because the constitution of the jiva is such as Ananda.
Mind carries. That is why, while defining the mind, if you remember, Mataji, I will just show you that screen. While defining the mind, only it was mentioned sa vasanatma. I will just show you. Yeah, this one. You see here, the second characteristic. This is a description of the mind. It's vasanatma. The mind itself is endowed with pious and sinful impressions. So pious and sinful impressions are automatically made of the three modes. The mind in itself carries the three modes actually. I don't know if that is relevant to your question. I'm based on what I understood from your question. I'm just you asked whether the jiva, instills the mind with the three modes. Is that what you asked?
Well, yes, kind of. I mean, that's what I was trying to understand, because the jiva is Satchitananda. So I was trying to understand where the gunas come in. So they come in with the mind, basically.
Okay. So basically, I'll have to tell you, Mataji, because I was thinking of skipping it, but because you brought out this point, so I'll have to go over this. So this is the verse, Mataji. This is a very important verse, which is like the whole Bhagavatam philosophy is there in this one verse. So it says, Bhayam, many times Prabhupada quotes this verse, Bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshatasyad ishad apetasya viparyayo asmritihi tan mayayato buddha abhajettam bhaktiyaika isham gurudevatatma. So this verse talks about how the living entity gets conditioned and how he gets completely back. So first is Ishad apetasya. I will tell you what it means. Ishad apetasya. Then the second is tanmayayato. Then the third is viparyayo asmritihi. Okay. Then the fourth is bhayam. Sorry, this leads to dvitiya binivesh. Then this leads to bhayam. Okay, so what are this? Ishad apetasya means when the living entity turns his face away from Krishna. So when he decides that I want to enjoy separately from Krishna, this leads to what? So Krishna has to facilitate it. So Krishna tries to facilitate it through the agency of Maya. He says he hands the jiva over to Maya. Okay, you please facilitate his desire to enjoy separately from me. So Maya says, okay, I will facilitate. So then how does Maya facilitate? Maya has two agents. One is called the Avaranatmika Shakti and the Prakshepatmika Shakti. The Avaranatmika Shakti first covers his constitutional nature, that I am the soul and I am a servant of Krishna. That is covered, because if he remembers that, then he cannot enjoy separately from Krishna. So that has to be covered. So he is covered. Then the Prakshepatmika Shakti of Maya makes the living entity, creates a false identity for the living entity and makes him identify with the body through the agency of the three modes. Okay. Then what happens? Then it leads to Dvitiya Abhinivesh. Then because he's identifying with material things, material body, and he's getting attracted to material things, then he becomes completely absorbed in things of this world. Then eventually, because he is still a spirit soul, he has eternal existence. So somehow he wants to enjoy them eternally. Okay. So this leads to the fear of losing things. So this is or else the fear of death. Essentially, this is fear of some death. This is samsara. Like that. So when the living entity chooses to turn away from Krishna, then he is handed over to Maya, and Maya's agents of Avaranatmika Shakti makes him forget his constitutional position, and the Prakshepatmika Shakti reinitiates him to this material world actually. And that's where the modes come. The modes are the ropes which bind the living entity to this material world through false understanding, false identification, false relationships, like that. Is that relevant, Mataji?
Hare Krishna, yes, that was exactly what I was wondering. Thank you so much for that question, for that answer, Prabhuji. And then I just want to clarify one more thing. So what you said toward the end, in order to transcend the modes, basically, we just have to please great devotees in Krishna. We have to practice devotional service.
Mm-hmm.
And
that also this verse says actually. You see what this verse says again? He says, Buddha. So this is 5-stage fall down of the jiva. And how can he go back? He says, Buddha, the intelligent person, abhajet tam. He worships Krishna. Okay. How? Bhaktya. Ekaya bhaktya. Ekaya bhaktya means by pure devotional service, when he worships Krishna, And who will guide him? Guru Devatatma. By accepting the Guru as one's life and soul and by taking guidance from him, if he worships Krishna through pure devotional service, then he gets reinstated back. The verse says that. So this verse is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is there in this verse. How the living entity falls down and how he can get reinstated back. Like that.
Thank you so very much, Prabhuji. This has been so helpful. And I always love your classes. And yes, I can't wait to go back and watch the video of this one again. I really appreciate it. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your service.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, do you have a few more minutes, Prabhu?
I have. If others are okay, I am okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu, for a very systematic delineation of the absolute truth and what is the purpose of the Vedas. Right? It was easy and palatable to understand, and lot of aspects to meditate on, Prabhu, like from this class, and very scientific and very nice visuals, Prabhu, to understand about that vasanas especially. So, Prabhuji, I have one or two questions, Prabhu. So, the aspect of vasanas that you mentioned, so sometimes we say purify one's heart, right? What does that mean now? Like, we know purification of vasanas, but what does that purification of heart mean?
Yeah, purifying the heart of all these materialistic vasanas.
So these vasanas are the entire subtle body, right? Like why? Yeah. Okay. I'm not getting it, Prabhu. Sorry.
Be purified. The subtle body has vasanas. It can be purified. They can be purified of material vasanas, and spiritual vasanas can be written. So the chitta, buddhi, mana, and ahankar can work in conjunction with material vasanas, and they can generate material emotions which can bind one to this material world. Or the chitta, buddhi, mana, and ahankar can work in conjunction with material vasanas which we can accumulate while we are engaging in devotional service, and they can generate spiritual emotions which can bind us to the spiritual world.
Okay. Prabhuji, one more, thank you, Prabhu. One more question that you covered the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also. Thank you very much, Prabhu. So I was thinking why the word Yogamaya was used, because we are already covered with Mahamaya, right? So Yogamaya is the spiritual.
Well, Krishna is always covered with Yogamaya, whereas the Jiva is covered by Mahamaya. So it's an additional covering actually. So, and also Yogamaya, many times we have a very stereotyped understanding of terminologies, but many times terminologies can be used in many different ways. There are contextual meanings to terminologies. For example, the word Grihamedi. So we have a very negative understanding of Grihamedi, but in general, Grihamedi is not a word which has a negative connotation. Grihamedi means householder, that's all. Like for example, there is a verse glorifying Lord Ram where it is mentioned, Namas Sita Sametaya Ramaya Grihamedine, like that. So where Lord Ram and Mother Sita are addressed as Grihamedis. So you may say, hey, why? How come you are calling them Grihamedis, right? But their Grihamedi means only householders. Their Grihamedi does not mean materialistic householders interested in sense gratification. But when the word Grihamedi is used in conjunction with the word Grihastha, then Grihamedi takes a negative connotation. There are many such words like Prajalpa. Prajalpa means what? Conversation. That's what it means. But when you use the word Prajalpa in conjunction with Krishna Katha, then Prajalpa takes a negative connotation. Right? So the words themselves, if you use Prajalpa in comparison with Krishna Katha.
Comparison. Okay. Comparison. Okay.
So then Prajalpa is bad, Krishna Katha is good. But Prajalpa in itself does not, it just means conversation, that's all.
Yeah, Prabhu,
So,
the one, yes. Yeah, this word also today you said punya karmanam, right? That also, punya generally we think pious activities.
Yeah,
but
that is one meaning.
Yeah.
Punya also means pleasing activities, actually.
Punya and also means devotional service, right, Prabhu, in that word?
Yeah, indirectly. Pleasing activities, and the activities which are pleasing to devotees and Krishna is devotional service. So it does not directly mean devotional service.
Okay.
It indirectly, through inference, it means devotional service.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Nice class for the weekend to start with. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Bhava.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Does anybody have any more questions for Prabhuji?
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Wow, this class is everything. This class is everything for me. So thank you so much. I have like a million questions, so you'll just have to stop me when there's some. Okay, so just as you were saying just now that words have different meanings in different contexts, this word duality always gives me a problem, you know? And so it seems like this word means different things in different contexts. But when it was brought up by you today, it was defined as arising from like and dislike. And you also hear that it means, you know, there's the opposites exist, you know, but opposites exist in the spiritual world too. So I'm just trying to get more clarity about what this word means, especially in how it was brought up in today's context, arising from like and dislike. And in general, you know, if I could just get more clarity about this word.
Yeah, thank you, Mother. It's a very nice question. Likes and dislikes do exist in the spiritual world also. You're absolutely right, actually. But it does not exist in terms of in the material world. Whatever gives me sense gratification, I like, and whatever takes me away from my sense gratification, I don't like. In the spiritual world also, likes and dislikes are there, but whatever gives Krishna gratification, I like, and whatever hinders Krishna's gratification, I dislike. So that's why it's the perverted reflection. Atmendriya priti vancha tarabale kam, Krishnendriya priti icha dhare premanam. So in the material world, likes and dislikes exist with respect to my own gratification. In the spiritual world, it exists with respect to Krishna's gratification, like that.
Okay, so you're saying therefore that when we have dislikes and dislikes that are independent of Krishna's interest, that's the time we refer to it as duality.
Yeah. So what we refer to as the world of duality is in the sense of the world of duality with respect to my own gratification. That's what it means. Otherwise, the spiritual world also, in one sense, is a world of duality only.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay. Another question is, I need to get a little more clarification about the slide that you had with the vasanas, you know, and below you had the chitta buddhi, mana, and false ego. So in that slide, you had the arrows going, you know, to each of these things.
Yeah.
But you also said in answer to, I think it was Anuradha's question, maybe, that, you know, the vasanas are just another part of the false ego. They're the impressions. That's one part of the false ego. I mean, I'm sorry. Subtle body. I misspoke. I meant subtle body. Yeah. So there's just another element, you know, along with the chitta buddhi, mana, false ego. And so is the reason why you have the arrows going to each of these things because
I have the arrows just to indicate that these four elements, they function in conjunction with the vasanas. These four, chitta, buddhi, mana, and ahankar, they work in conjunction with the vasanas. So the chitta can identify a familiar stimulus because it has connection with this database. This vasanas is the database.
Oh, I
So
always
it
thought
has
that
connection with that. So that's how it's able to identify, oh, it's a familiar stimulus.
I always thought that the chitta was the database that stored all of our past impressions. No?
Well, I mean, you can say, I mean, no one knows exactly where the vasanas are. Generally, we say that mind is the repository of past impressions. But what the Shastras call as mind is this unit, is this whole unit of 1, 2, 3, 4, chitta, buddhi, mana, and ahankar. Many times the Shastras talk about them as being mana. But what it is this four, all four together is what it is talking about. And they all have access to the vasanas. Whether the vasanas are exactly stored in them, we do not know. At least I am not aware of it. But they have access to the vasanas, that much it is mentioned in the Shastras.
So have you never heard that, because I've heard this, several times before, that it is the chitta that is the storehouse of past impressions.
Correct. But what that chitta means is all these four. It is not this chitta independently. So 90% of the times in the Shastras, when the word chitta is used, it indicates this all four of them together. It is not independently chitta. So only once, as far as I know, in Bhagavatam, only in one place, actually the word chitta is used exclusively to indicate chitta, which is in 3rd canto, 26th chapter, where the 24 elements are described by Kapila Dev. There he specifically describes what is chitta, what is buddhi, what is mana, what is ahankar. But generally the word chitta, when in other places, as far as I have observed, what it indicates is all these four together is called as chitta many times.
Yeah, you see, this is another word that different contexts it has different.
Yeah.
So, but when in that context that you just mentioned, with where Kapila, I think you said Kapila Dev is mentioning the 25 elements.
Yeah.
In that context, what's the definition there for chitta?
That's what I told. That which helps gain awareness of a familiar stimulus. When the senses come in touch with a familiar stimulus, what draws the attention of the living entity? That is chitta. And buddhi and mana actually do the research work. What is that stimulus? They try to understand the stimulus, and then mana finds out what are the emotions connected with that stimulus, and false ego owns those emotions. Oh, I felt happy eating that samosa. Oh, that Karela was awful. I hated it, like that. So false ego owns those emotions.
Okay, yeah, actually, that you just now answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you that distinction between mana and the false ego.
Yeah.
Okay, and then one thing you had mentioned earlier was that I think this is my last question, actually, that the subtle body, I think, was it the subtle body that you said is constitutionally part of Krishna's Shakti?
Yeah, you can say most. Yeah, right.
Right, but then functionally it may behave spiritually or materially, right? Yeah. So when you said that, I got confused because of, when we talk of spiritualizing the mind, right? the analogy is given of an iron rod.
Correct.
So when an iron rod is always iron, but when it is immersed in fire, then it behaves like fire. But when it behaves like fire, it doesn't mean that it's now fire. Functionally, it's fire, but so even when it's
I understand your point, Mataji.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's why you should understand the scope of any analogy. So every analogy is
limited. Yes.
It has a particular utility to make a particular point. So in order to explain the spiritualizability of the subtle body, that analogy is used. That analogy is not used to describe the constitutionally spiritual and functionally material nature of the subtle body. So that analogy is not used to explain that. So that is why if you use that analogy to understand this aspect which Jiva Goswami is trying to explain. For example, Jiva Goswami in trying to explain this point of the functional, constitutional, spiritual nature and functional material nature of the subtle body, he does not use the analogy of iron rod and fire. So that analogy is used for a different purpose.
But Prabhu, when we speak of subtle, whenever this term subtle body comes up, right?
Yeah.
It means automatically we're talking about material nature.
That's how we are generally used to hearing and thinking that way. Why? Because whatever may be the constitutional nature of the subtle body, it will generate only material emotions as long as the subtle body is working in conjunction with material impressions. And when the ego is false ego. So it does not really matter whether it is constitutionally spiritual or constitutionally material. It does not in one sense really matter, because it will perpetrate our stay in the material world only. So therefore, when we are talking about purification of subtle body, what we are essentially talking about is purification of these vasanas, these material impressions. When these material impressions are wiped out, and through our practice of devotional service, when spiritual impressions are rewritten in that area wherever the impressions are stored, then the very same chitta, buddhi and mana and ahankar, they work in conjunction with those spiritual impressions, and they transform all sensory signals into spiritual emotions. Does that make sense, Mataji?
So are you saying therefore that our subtle body is never actually material by nature?
Well,
I mean, functionally, yes.
Yes. You're right. Yeah, our subtle body is not really material in nature in that sense, but it can generate material emotions when it works in conjunction with material impressions. Yeah.
Wow. That's an amazing statement. Amazing.
Yeah, this was the first time I read. I was also very shocked. We had to read it many times over to actually grasp it, actually.
And you said this is in Bhakti Sandarbha?
Yeah.
Okay, wow, this was an amazing class, Prabhu. Wow. Actually, just one more. I thought I was finished, but there's just one more. If you could go back to the 5 types of ignorance slide, please.
Yeah.
Let me see. This first one, the vasanas, ignorance. To mistake that which is impermanent to be permanent. And that was just, so to see things, I'm just trying to correlate my understanding of the fact that vasanas means impressions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, it also means to misunderstand things as they are. So I'm just
Yeah.
trying to correlate those two ideas.
Yeah, they don't correlate in such an obvious way, but why do we think, even though the soul in reality has nothing to do with matter, what is it that makes us think that matter can actually give us pleasure? It is the vasanas only, right?
Past impressions.
Yeah, that's what vasanas. So past impressions are vasanas.
Yeah, past
So,
impressions make us think.
yeah, so that is why ignorance, I have it is mentioned here as vasanas. Vasanas means past impressions. Even though in reality the soul cannot derive even an iota of pleasure from matter, it is these past impressions which make us believe that I can actually derive some pleasure. This ignorant understanding is generated by these vasanas. That is why avidya is related to vasanas.
But then, if the soul cannot actually derive pleasure, then the question arises, then how is it possible for such an impression to be made?
That is why you remember I just showed
I think I know what you're going to say. Is it about the like the electricity with the refrigerator and the
exactly. Yeah, so it is that is the creation of Maya. Maya creates this understanding that yes, you can actually derive some pleasure out of it, like that. Just like when the tongue is, when we are jaundiced, anything that is inherently sweet actually tastes bitter, but it's an illusory experience. Actually, it's not a bitter substance, but the tongue is tasting it as bitter. So that illusion can be created by Maya, like that.
Yeah, I just need you to go back to the ignorance slide, 5 types of ignorance.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. Then asmita, body identification of I and mine, to accept only
direct sense perception as real. Of course, I need to spend a lot of time to describe these things. Maybe in one of the later classes I will describe, because I think because how each one of these things actually, this description that's given and what we discuss might sound little difficult because they are not so obvious based on what I have described also. So it needs some additional explanation. For example, how is this telling that only accept direct sense perception as real? Because I am seeing myself covered only by a human body. So that is what I am. So what I was before I transmigrated into this body, I am not seeing it. So I am not that. So that is asmita, which means it makes you identify with the current body only and with no other body.
Right. Okay, let me just see 3, 4, and 5 very quickly. Let me see. Raga is attachment. Okay, dvesha is repulsion, and abhinivesh, absorption in the body as the basis for sense gratification. And fear. Okay, so this, I know you explained it before, but this absorption in the body, how do you distinguish that from raga and dvesh?
Because absorption in body means whatever is pleasurable for the body, I want it eternally, and whatever is unpleasurable for the body, I want it gone eternally. So So this is what is actually absorption in the body. Otherwise, what does it mean to be absorbed in the body? Which means whatever gives pleasure to the body, which means whatever is raga, I want it eternally with me. And whatever is unpleasurable to the body, I want it eternally out of my body, or not. I don't want it to come in touch with my body. And because death actually puts an end to whatever I like, and it takes away from me whatever I like permanently, therefore I fear death. So actually this fear of death is actually deep rooted absorption in things what I like and things which I don't like. So they are all connected in that way.
So can you say that Abhinivesh is just like a more intensified
raga and dvesha?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Prabhu. You know, I was writing down the definition of asmita, and now I can't see it. Number 2, let me just quickly see again what that was. Body identification. Oh, only accept direct perception and sense perception as real. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. So I think we are way past the ending time. So thank you all very much for your patient listening and your very enthusiastic participation. It was so pleasurable. I mean, when there is no discussion, it's so boring actually. So thank you all very much. It was wonderful.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for your giving wonderful class, Prabhu. Nice question and answer session, Prabhu. Thank you so much for your valuable time and association to us this morning and enlightening on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let us pay obeisances to Prabhuji and all the devotees. Vancha
Thank you so much for taking so much time, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Very wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Such an amazing class. So grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare